bit different than Shelley's and Chris's, but it's really about needing to, or I should say needing to, and I think encouraging multi-institutional research in interprofessional education. And so with that being said, I'm not sure how I forward. Oh, there we go. Okay. So a disclosure about what I'm talking about today is that there is a group of 4 institutions here in the United States that have been working together for the last 2 to 3 years in regards to just trying to do some multi-institutional research. And so I have to give credit to St. Louis University, University of New England. Didn't have the opportunity to work with Shelley and Chris today, but worked with Karen Pardue from that university, and then Virginia Commonwealth University. And we came together just through, actually through conferences and knowing one another and deciding that it's time to look at things in a different way to hopefully be able to study some generalizable outcomes or have some generalizable outcomes in IPE specific to perceptions. Sorry, I keep clicking and it doesn't want to go. There we go. Okay. So some people ask in the literature, or I've even heard from different peers that I talk to, they're like, why do we want to keep talking about perceptions? We need to stop talking about perceptions and we need to move on from that. And I have a different philosophy, because what we have in the literature is really great in terms of many single site studies looking at perceptions. But there is a reason to study perceptions, and maybe in particular a reason to study those perceptions in early learners is because if you look at a couple of theories, and this is only a couple of theories I put up here, but either reason, action, or planned behavior, they do indicate that some level of perceptions or attitudes, or I guess they hypothesize that some level of attitudes and perceptions can lead to behavioral change, or at least behavioral intention. And so studying perceptions, I believe we have a lot of it, but we also have a large gap in this area. And so when we started to look up what other multi-site interprofessional education research was published in major databases, we only came up with 4. And so there might be some, I know, understanding that have been delivered at presentations, at conferences, local, international, or national. But when we look into the literature, we only found 4. And so I think that's one, just an indicator of a large gap. And so you can see the 4 right here on your screen. The first 2 actually measured interprofessional collaborative practice encounters and interprofessional collaborative practice behaviors. And the first 2 also only measured one profession. And then the second 2, Koster and then Poling, both measured perceptions using the ripples. One happened in the UK, one happened in the United States, and you can see that the professions varied. And so if we're starting with 4 multi-site interprofessional education research studies that we can expand upon, start to compare and contrast, obviously there's a need to do that because we just do not have the information that's needed. And within each of these research studies, so just to say, what if we wanted to compare the outcomes of the ripples from Koster and Poling? What you start to understand as you read the methodologies, it becomes very difficult to do a true comparison because not all the descriptors are present in those methodologies. Not that they don't have those descriptors and they could not be matched up, but at least from a literature perspective, we're not describing the IPE experiences or activities in the same manner. And then also in regards to that, so just say with the Koster article where they had 3 UK universities, they did not publish data that would allow you to further analyze at University A, this is the outcome, University B, and University C, they aggregated those outcomes. And so you're not able to make those comparisons. So I think having maybe more of a standard approach as we move forward in terms of multi-site methodologies, that would help us be able to compare and contrast a little bit better and move forward the research a little bit faster. And so then we looked at longitudinal, so it had to be a longitudinal research study, so beyond a single site, a single event. We looked if they were measuring IPE perceptions and if they were doing that in early learners and if they actually had, so not just their student cohort, but their participant cohort in their whatever measurement tool they decided to use was that greater than 100, just to see what the outcomes would be. And so we found 4 again. And like I said, there's probably more beyond what's in the literature databases, but we did not go into conference abstracts. So we found 4, 3 happening in the United States, 1 happening in Scotland. And you can see the first 2 are from the first institution, using 3 different perception tools, measured over a semester, 1 course. They had positive change, and they were measuring that change using that assessment tool in real time. And so what I mean by real time is prior to the students engaging in the interprofessional activity, they were measured. And then after engaging in the interprofessional activity for that semester, they were measured. And then you can see the Lockman, which is the 3rd one, out of Virginia Commonwealth. And so St. Louis University, SLU, and VCU is a part of this 4-group collaborative that I'm working with right now. But they use the SPICE R2, so another tool. They had 4 sessions over 2 months. They also indicated a positive change, but they used a retrospective pre-post test. So after the 2 months was over and the students had engaged in all 4 sessions, they asked the students, where do you think you were, rate yourself where you think you were prior to the experience, and now where do you rate yourself now? And so doing that retrospective look helps to maybe decrease that inflation of the pre-score that you might see with novice learners. And then the last one with McFadden happened in Scotland. They used the ripples in the IEPS. It was over 2 semesters. They also indicated a positive change, and they measured that in real time. And once again, it becomes difficult to start making comparisons here just because there is a lack of information to compare in terms of the number of articles that are present. But then also, too, if you even measure the ripples from Rubling and McFadden ripples, I forgot if they both looked at them in terms of the same way. So did they look at total ripple scores in regard, and then as well as the 3 or 4 subscales that the ripples has? And they were both measured in real time, so that's good. Oh, the other thing that's also missing in terms of the methodology is the learning environment. So how many teams how many teams were the classes broken into? How many students per team? Did they do this in a lecture hall? Did they do this in small group around round tables? And so it's hard to start comparing when there are some gaps, but you do the best that you can. And I think that's positive as long as your intention is to move forward and to advance the literature. And so then, you have another opportunity that I believe Shelley really brought forward in terms of theory. And that, I believe, when you read some of these articles, we do not have a good trend of documenting the theory that we're using in terms of the development of our curriculum, even if it is multiple. But then you also have now frameworks. And so I just put up 3 of them here. Those are the 3 that I've been interested in and I've been looking into. So whether you're looking at interprofessional identity from Kalili, and they have a tool that which you can measure interprofessional identity, and then you can look at the meta model for interprofessional development by Reindeers. And they also have the EPIS, and so they have their own subscale, and then also the 7 C's of team science, and that I didn't put Salis's name, I apologize, but that would be Salis's framework. And so, what type of framework, what type of theory, what type of framework are we using when we're measuring anything in IPE, but then also from a comparison perspective, what might drive or what might be foundational to our curriculum when we're starting to compare across institutions. And so this is really my last slide. So it's quite simple in that we're interested, and I'm sure my colleagues at the other 3 institutions are interested too. We actually have a meeting this afternoon. But LSU Health Sciences Center is an academic health sciences center. We have 6 schools, 20 programs at the bachelor, master's, clinical doctorate, and the PhD levels. We have a 2-year IPE curriculum that spans over 4 semesters that focuses on first and second year students. It's a requirement. And our students do meet monthly face-to-face. They have a project presentation in March. And my newest site that I'll be collaborating in the future is the University of Manitoba. And the only reason that relationship came about is because I was online just trying to determine who also had somewhat of a either 1 or 2 year long curriculum in IPE focused on early learners. And I happened to just find their website where they had it nicely laid out. And so I would say another aspect, which can be difficult with multi-site research, is just trying to find others who might be similar in what you're doing and have maybe similar resources. But then I think sometimes you don't necessarily need to have similar resources, because then that might make for very good curriculum contrast in terms of outcomes. And so with that being said, I will stop.